Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Culture Binge, the Wisecrack podcast, where we analyze, explore, and critique everything going down in the cultural zeitgeist. I'm Michael, joined as always by Wisecrack's Director of Military Surveillance, Alec, and Wisecrack researcher and number one tipper, Serby.
Hi.
Hey, how are you both doing today?
Well, how are you?
Good. It feels good to be back on our normal schedule. And just for anyone who's listening to this or streaming with us right now, just so you know, we've been all over the place because everything's been all over the place. But our normal schedule is every other Wednesday, streaming at 10 a.m. Pacific. So we will be back on that schedule from here on out. Don't complain. We told you. But we're glad to be back on a regular time. We're still, for the foreseeable future, going to just be doing slaps and no chaps because we live in a chap. Our world is a big chap. There's chaps everywhere. So we're only talking about our whole life is chapping. So let's all share one thing that's been slapping in the 5 days since we did this. So Alec, how about we start with you? What slaps in the life of Alec?
You know, I was really nervous. We did the new Philosopher Reacts format where you reacted to the NXIVM cult, and people really like it. That makes me, I'm glad that they like it, and that is what slaps for me.
That's good. I agree. I'm glad that
You're glad that people are not mad at you on the internet.
That's nice.
Yeah, there's still some people that were mad at me, but you know, you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. So yeah. Serby, how about you?
I put up Christmas lights in my inside my house, and it just makes everything look so pretty and nice, and it's like a small touch that makes me really happy. So I put it on when all the other lights are off and I'm watching TV or if I'm reading. It's just nice to have a better color.
I agree. I don't even care about the meaning of the Christmas lights. It's just nice when it's like darker out earlier, a little chilly, you see some lights. So I think that's a great move. I recommend everyone does that regardless of your denominational affiliation. I'll say mine, also holiday related. And this is different for me. I'm excited about next week and Thanksgiving because I can't go anywhere. I don't have to eat bad food that someone's family makes that's bland and flavorless. So I'm instead going to try to do a kind of Mexican-themed Thanksgiving where I braise some turkey legs and do like a turkey barbacoa thing. And then I'm going to make this cranberry habanero salsa. I have all these ideas, and I'm just excited about it. I'm excited to just not have to appease, you know, a 60 or 70-year-old white person that doesn't like food with flavor because I hate Thanksgiving food.
That sounds really good.
Yes,
yeah, that sounds amazing.
I'll document. I'll let everyone know how it goes, and maybe we can change the game. Now, before we... Oh, Alec, do you have a thought?
Oh, well, it was just... this is a little bit further out, but Christmas. Yeah. I was excited to introduce my partner to Jewish Christmas, which is to eat Chinese food. We could also do Thai food, so she could experience my culture. But she said that would quote make her sad. So,
wow.
I think she's an anti-Semite. Everyone, definitely. Please let me know.
Hey, listen, as someone that grew up deeply Catholic, I love Jewish Christmas. I love Chinese food. I love watching movies. I love staying away from people and too much cheer. So I'm all in. If you've never done it before, everyone should give it a try. And you know, maybe this year that looks like, of course, getting Chinese takeout and having a movie night in your backyard. But still, fun thing to do. And before we get really into it, we have a lot to talk about today. Just a reminder, if you like this podcast, if you're a regular listener, subscribe and review on whatever app or platform you listen to. Most of them 5 stars, the highest. If there's one where there's more than 5 stars, please do that. And you know, if you want to ask a question or leave a comment when you rate and review, and maybe we'll look into that. But we appreciate it. Consider doing it. It is the season of giving. So we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about how the military tracks everything you do. We'll talk about the coming wave of TV shows that are all about the same thing. But we're going to start with Serby telling us about something that on the surface sounds a little bit disturbing, which is the teaching of dieting in schools. So
it is
Serby,
so
take
disturbing.
It away.
So I recently read a New York Times article entitled, "Are Schools Teaching Kids to Diet?" And I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and I just keep getting angrier and angrier. The more I read, the more I think about my own experience with health education. So many of you might remember learning about the food pyramid and its many iterations over the years. I think it was just a standard pyramid. And then at one point it turned into like a wheel or a plate. Mm-hmm. And then it was something with like steps on the side. But for those of you who don't learn about the food pyramid, the basic idea is that it teaches people how to create a meal based on the amount of protein, fruit, vegetables, carbs, and other items that you should strive to eat every day. And nutritionists have often discussed the problems with teaching people proper nutrition through this visual. And now with the rise in online learning, there's increased scrutiny in what we teach our children about food, body image, and weight. So since the pandemic started, many students are taking health and physical education classes online, and parents are now concerned about the lesson plans because pandemic schooling has provided parents with an insight that they didn't have before. So now they can overhear the teachers discuss lessons on Zoom. They can print worksheets for their children. And here are a few examples of the assigned coursework. So teenagers have to complete a curriculum developed by a nonprofit children's health system called Nemours, I may have pronounced that incorrectly, which helps teenagers create a healthy weight loss plan. Others are asked to keep a food log to count calories, which has caused students to not want to eat because they don't want to write it down. They also have to share their weight with either the class or with their teacher. 7-year-olds are asked to keep a fitness log for remote physical education courses to talk about how many sit-ups and planks they're able to complete. So Virginia Soul-Smith, the author of this article, asks an excellent question. Why do dieting and weight loss take center stage in so many school assignments? She then examines the reasons why the U.S. education system focuses on weight, body image, and nutrition. So the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention created the Health Education Curriculum Analysis Tool and the National Health Education Standards. So these standards outline specific objectives by age. For example, by age 8, students should be able to demonstrate effective refusal skills to avoid eating unhealthy food. By age 10, they should be able to state personal beliefs to improve the food and beverage selections of others. And by 13, they should be able to evaluate their body weight. And there's so many problematic aspects of focusing on diet, body image, and weight when educating children. But I was particularly disgusted with two aspects of this story. The first is that this idea that children should be expected to influence and persuade others to change their eating habits. We expect 8-year-olds to tell their parents to buy healthier food, or their children or their friends to eat different things. And it's a repulsive public health strategy to put that burden on children. And I also don't like that these standards are geared towards wealthy white people, because they don't account for multicultural differences in food. Some cultures may not eat dairy, or they might eat more protein. So to say that there's a standard for what's considered an ideal meal and food intake it's so arrogant. And the other thing that I have a problem with is that it's not inclusive of families and individuals who struggle financially and don't have the means to afford fruits and vegetables and things like that. And so children are sitting in classrooms listening to teachers label their daily meals as unhealthy or bad for them. But maybe a parent has no choice but to buy that $1 Happy Meal from McDonald's. They don't have the time to dedicate towards cooking a nutritious meal. So I think that when we do things like this, it helps, it encourages children to develop food anxieties, and it's been bothering me so much. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about this and about your experiences with food education.
I think I agree with a lot of your concerns, and I'm this maybe just like putting those in a framing is like, I often think that there's like large scale issues, like America as a country is just like very unhealthy for a lot of reasons. But I think systemically we try to make it about individual choices, which individual choices are like, they exist, they're important, but we don't acknowledge the systems at play. So to your point, like when parents don't have money. So like I'm a guy, I don't have kids, and you know I share one bedroom. Like I'm living well, you know, below my means, and so if I need to buy a healthy bougie snack like cashews, which are very expensive, like I can do that. I don't need to get the 25 cent or 50 cent Cheeto thing at the bodega. They're knockoff Cheetos. But like, you know, growing up as a working class kid, like I know those struggles of like this is what is cheap and filling, or when parents are working several jobs and don't have time to cook healthy meals, and so. There's that component. There's the component of, you know, different cultures eat different foods in different ways. I mean, this is probably not something that affects, you know, a lot of sort of people in mainland America, but like, never mind. I'm not going to use that example. But yeah, like different cultures have different relationships to food, and they may or may not be healthy in different ways. And so it's hard to do like a one size fits all approach. But I think the other thing is I took a great class in college that I really liked. As a wellness class that taught nutrition, but not like in this, what I think, dumb way. Like I think it would be much better to be like, hey kids, like here's what saturated fat is, here's what salt is, here's how they interact with your body. And you know, everything has salt in it, or not everything, but lots of things have salt in it. Everything has fat. There's different kinds of fat. Like I learned what a trans fat was. They've since been banned in most places. They're fucking awful for you and they should be banned. But I think like those kinds of decisions. So then like the article talks about teaching kids that cake is bad. It's like, well, cake's not necessarily bad if, you know, you're having a treat at a birthday party, but it's bad you know, for your heart potentially if you're eating it all the time. But that's not because it's cake. It's because like saturated fat is linked to like all these different things. And so I think there's a way to just be like, hey, be aware of like what you're putting in your mouth, but not necessarily in this sort of good, bad, evil dichotomy. And I say that as a person who basically like has a lot of various medical reasons for like wanting to count like how much sodium I'm taking in or saturated fat or stuff like that.
Yeah. Shouts to the saturated fat gang, which I'm also a part of. But yeah, I mean, this is, I see this on a few different sides, right? Because of course there's, if we want to just be like objective logic bros about it, there is a world in which some of what's said in the article you're referring to, Serby, and some of this education like is right in that a lot of the foods that people are eating are not healthy. A lot of the things that we grow up thinking are normal aren't healthy. Like I grew up thinking, I was talking to someone else the other day, this will age me. There was a phase when Coca-Cola put out this drink called Fruitopia. And I was like in middle school, and we had it in vending machines. And I remember being like, oh, it has like kind of psychedelic hippie logos and it's like fruit. So this is like good for you. But it was just fucking sugar water. Just like
people need to know that that's bad. People need to understand that fruit juice is not a healthy drink.
Yeah. And
it's not
like
bad. It's just like not.
But the same way, I was telling someone recently as well. I forgot about this, but you know, when I was in high school, my favorite thing to get for lunch was a giant slice of pepperoni pizza, French fries, a pink lemonade, and a cookie. And I just can't even imagine now how much salt, sugar, and fat was in all that, and that was provided to me. And I was reflecting on this because in Bill Buford's recent book, I forget the name of it, it came out like 4 months ago. He talks about moving to Lyon, France, and having his kids who are from America go to school there, and how the thing that tripped them out the most was that in French public school, they give you like really good food. They teach the kids about like how they prepare it, where stuff comes from, what components make up a normal meal. And then, you know, he talks about his kids going back from France to America and having their first school lunch and coming home being like, Dad, what the fuck? So, I mean, I think there has to be a way to deal with this comprehensively and teach people healthy food habits. But in the same way, like, I think the class thing and the financial aspects are huge here. You know, and I think along with things just being expensive, we know that a lot of, especially urban neighborhoods, and I think rural communities in America, are food deserts where people don't have other options besides going to get fast food or something they can get at a corner store. So, I guess what worries me is kids learning all the right things to do, but then feeling like shit because they do not have, or their family doesn't have the means or resources to do it. And not to be obnoxious here, but it is one of those things that is like a systemic issue that can't be solved on the scale of like what we teach kids in school. And it's worrisome to think about, I don't know, a kid who's growing up in a rough situation, learning all this, and then like blaming their parents or something. Mm-hmm. Also, too, when you mentioned calorie counting, it just Nexium stuff. So I had at least referenced that one of the things that was recommended is classic Nexian behavior.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you have said. I also think that it can cultivate, like it could help. I think that when we teach children these habits like calorie counting and like focusing on like sit-ups and things like that, I think it could create a breeding ground for like eating disorders. And when I was in high school, like I remember learning about things like calorie counting, and we weren't asked to do it, but it was like pushed as like, oh, if you're looking to lose weight, you could count your calories and you should only have 1,200 calories a day. And I was just too lazy to do something like that. But I remember thinking like I could lose weight by doing calorie counting. And when I was in college, I took a health class. And one of the things that we had to do was like take our measurements of our body. And so like, I remember like,
you were to school in the 1950s?
I know. So my professor was a former Olympian. And so she's like, you shouldn't be concerned about your weight. It's more about the inches on your body. So she needed a volunteer to help like show students how to measure like different parts of their body. And I was the student that she selected. So she dragged me in front of the class and like measured my whole body and was like shouting out my measurements. And I remember thinking like if it was anyone else, they would have been mortified. Like I guess I just like things like that don't bother me as much. But that's a horrible thing to have happen like in front of your class when you're like 18 years old, to be like, and her waist is this many inches and her thigh is this
no
big.
One do that. Well, Serby, can I go back and ask you about one thing you said a second ago? Do you think that the sort of calorie counting and diet stuff is on par with having kids do like push-ups and sit-ups or something like that? Because there is part of my brain that when you said that reacted and thought, well, if people are at home, they don't have gym class, maybe it's good for them to like not like kill themselves doing it, but like get into some healthy practices. I say this as someone who's let my body completely deteriorate over the past 8 months. So I guess I wish there was someone on Zoom yelling at me to do push-ups, but
I can do
we
that.
think those are equally as dangerous?
So
Thanks,
I think that they can be. I do think that it's important to encourage children to be physically active, but I do think that there's a fine line in the same way that there's a fine line in teaching children about counting calories. So if we place an emphasis on the number of minutes you run or the number of planks and sit-ups you're able to accomplish, it takes away from children developing healthy fitness patterns. So the emphasis should be on like finding a physical activity that you enjoy, or like trying to like be active, rather than like, oh, well, Bob only did 15 sit-ups and Susie did 25. So there are things like fitness addictions, just like there are like eating disorders. There's like fitness disorders. So we could have the same thing. And if that combined with the fact that we're teaching children to count calories, like that is just the perfect storm for having like an eating disorder and a fitness disorder. And then children are a mess and they're not able to develop healthy habits.
This wasn't on Zoom, but as a child, a very sedentary child who loved to play video games all day, nothing convinced me that I didn't want to exercise more than PE. Because it would be like, go run a mile. It's like, I can't do that. It's like, well, you're going to fail. It's like, fuck you. I'm just going to sit here and do nothing. And then like, I really rebelled and started like hating all physical activity. And then as I got older, I think like later in high school, I discovered things, to your point, Serby, that I enjoyed. Like I enjoyed, lifting weights at the gym. Even after college, I enjoy hiking. I still, to this day, despise running. I feel like it's bad for your knees and your heart. That's not true, but probably for me it is. I don't know. And so I am concerned about that. But yeah, I think there's a way to encourage people to work out. And I don't have a lot of faith, in my experience, in the sorts of PE teachers that I've had.
Yeah, this is a rough one. This is a really rough one. Because in one sense, I just wish that, I don't know, it brings me back to the topic I think I brought up maybe, let's call it 6 weeks ago, about the perfect diet that some doctors found that was basically just a version of the Mediterranean diet. And I think the thing I said then, which I still do like, is that the version of like the Mediterranean diet food pyramid isn't that didactic. It's mostly just like Mostly eat vegetables and grains and beans. Sometimes eat some fish or some lean protein. And when you really got to, have a little cheese or butter as a treat. And I think like that view of looking at eating not counting calories, basically just thinking like most of the stuff I put in my body should be something that like grows in the ground or whatever. And then occasionally I can have some of this gnarly shit as a snack. I just wish there was a way we could teach that in a more general, comprehensive way. But I don't know. I do. Maybe I'm the bad guy here. I do feel a little bit for, I guess, educators that are aware that a lot of children are like cooped up in a sedentary way. We know this affects their mental health as well. It's just like, I don't know. It just sucks. It sucks because it's a problem. I don't think this is the right solution, and I don't know what a good solution would be right now. So it feels frustrating to think about as a non-parent.
We need to bring back DDR. Every kid needs to play DDR for 2 hours, and that's all the exercise that they need.
Honestly, that was the best. That's the only reason I ever got in shape my freshman year of college is my friend Nate had a full DDR set up in his dorm room, and we just got obsessed. And all my nerdy, lanky friends got in really good cardiovascular health because of DDR. Also, if you don't know what DDR is, I don't know what to tell you. Do people still play that? Is that a thing?
They have it in arcades, I've heard.
Okay.
Arcades.
Well, everyone's
I love
going to
arcades, by the way. So fun.
Hey, at 25% capacity, why not? Okay, we should probably move on. Any other thoughts on the dieting in schools issue? Serby, do you have any final solution? Alec, do you know what we should do?
I have a lot of thoughts, but I'd like to hear how other countries learn about diet and education and nutrition. So if you live in a non-US place, please write in and educate us, because I'd love to hear.
I.e. all the countries that are healthier than us, because we're like the worst in every metric.
My dumb suggestion is like a food class where it's like, here's lettuce and here's iceberg lettuce. Notice that this one tastes like shit. Notice that these are delicious. Here's a piece of broccoli. Here's how you season things. Don't listen to your parents. I would call them boomer parents, but they're not even boomers anymore. And see, there's no shaming. It's just like, here's how to make these things delicious. And I think we'd be better off.
Yeah. To riff off Alec's thing, all schools should have a on-site organic farm. There should be a class where you learn about farming and plants and all that. And then you also have a cooking class where someone teaches you how to make those things delicious. So as a very young child, you're able to be like, oh, the shit that grows in the ground, I make a little vinaigrette, I grill this thing like that. All of a sudden we have delicious food. That's dank. And maybe even you can go home then. And if your parents are working their asses off to try to survive in this horrible world, you can be like, hey dad, can I make you an omelet with a side of arugula?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And also like, how dare you not use salt and pepper, you fucking freak.
Yeah. Okay. So we solved it. So, get all the school board people on the phone. And also, well, yeah, but like Serby said, we'd love to hear from you, and we'll tell you how to do that later. So stick around. Now, speaking of sedentary lifestyles, I want to talk about TV for a little bit. Big shocker. But something that's come up recently, I think a thing we've been worried about, or at least I've been worried about for a while, is the effect that the COVID-19 pandemic is going to have on TV, both how it's made and and how it affects the content of TV. So I don't know. Personally, something I have been afraid of for a long time is that TV shows and movies would be about COVID. And that in the year to 2 years after we kind of get through the pandemic, we're going to have to watch a bunch of crap that is about it. And it seems like that's what's happening. So a lot of TV and film are now putting out, and some stuff's already coming out, are incorporating COVID into their storylines. In particular, a lot of medical shows are doing this. So just like a list of shows that we know for sure are incorporating COVID-19 into the storylines of the new seasons. Grey's Anatomy and Station 19, New Amsterdam, all medical stuff. The Conners, Shameless, Superstore, This Is Us, Blackish and Grownish, The Good Doctor, The Resident, NCIS New Orleans. Also, it was just announced yesterday that Judd Apatow is directing a Netflix comedy about comedians dealing with COVID, which is what we all want. And then, of course, there's been 3 shows that have come out thus far, filmed using social distancing stuff for remote technology, dealing with COVID. Love in the Time of Corona, Connecting, Social Distance. I've watched none of them because they all sound bad. And some of this has been personal to me because I happen to live down the street from the lot where they're currently filming Grey's Anatomy. And around that lot, there's these outdoor areas where there's like tons of extras dressed in nursing clothes. And a couple times I've thought there was like an emergency medical center near my house, but there's not. So I've seen them trying to film COVID stuff over there. And here's my thoughts on it. And I'm curious what you guys think. My big question is, do we want to be reminded of COVID on TV as it's happening and after it's happened, right? Do we want the media we consume to remind us of a period that I think for a lot of people will be traumatic? And I do think there's going to be a lot of long-term effects in our lives from living through this period that will, knock on wood, say might be, 18 months of our lives. And I wonder, is this a time to think about the value of entertainment as escapism? And I know for me, some of the shows that I've found the most comfort in during this time have been like old episodes of Anthony Bourdain's shows, both his Travel Channel 1 and his CNN show. And I found them comforting because they take me away from this world of isolation and COVID precaution and being at home, and show me something about the world. In the same way I've watched a lot of other food shows like the Taco Chronicles and Chef's Table and stuff like that, because they have this escapist feel to them. I even think now I've accidentally watched some episodes of the new season of The Crown. Feels similar. It's just a different world. It's escapist. And I don't want to be glib here, but I do think we've all been low-key, at least a little bit traumatized by everything that's happened in the past 8 months. So I just wonder, like, do we want to be reminded of this for the next 2 to 3 years when we sit down to relax? And a lot of the shows that I just listed aren't like art shows. These are network TV shows basically meant to help us chill out at the end of a shitty day. And, I would say the flip side of this is I know there is a historical precedent for making films about traumatic periods we go through. Like if you look at the films of the late 40s and early 50s, you get a lot of war movies to kind of talk about World War II and everything we went through. And the post-Vietnam years, you have a lot of films that deal with the after effects of the Vietnam War. And of course, we even have a good amount of movies in the 90s that deal with the AIDS crisis and everything that we went through in the 80s. But I wonder if we need entertainment about COVID and if we need it that quickly. And in particular, if it's something we want to watch right now, because a lot of the shows I just listed, like they are coming back soon. So I wonder what you all think about this. Is this something you want to see? Is it something you think we need to see? Or is it a horrible idea?
I think it's a horrible idea. I have no interest in seeing anything like this. I watch television and movies to escape from reality, not to see the shit show again on TV. Like if I wanted that, I would just look outside. So I find it very stressful, and I don't watch any of those shows that you've listed, but I'm concerned that this is what other shows will start to do. Like when Billions comes back to film, like are they going to be in masks and stuff? And I understand that it's like an easy fix, like have the actors wear masks, have them be socially distant, and we don't have to deal with like the logistics of keeping everyone safe. But as a consumer, I just don't want to see it. Like it's already stressful to think about, and I don't want to have to deal with it again.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I don't like that.
Yeah. Before I say my thing, I do want to thank Andrew, who says I never make it here, so I'm celebrating. Thank you for the donation, and as always, Dude Abides. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew and Dude Abides.
I might be a little different. What I will say is I think historically with really scary things, people are not as on the nose about it, or maybe they are, but during the Cold War, there was stuff, about that specifically, but there was, a lot of like evil alien invaders coming, and they're an existential threat, and they're going to blow us all up, or they're mad about our nukes. And so they were projecting anxieties in this sort of like not lightly fictionalized, like very fictionalized way. And I think it's interesting, there's kind of been like a medical turn to the zombie genre. If you think about 28 Days Later, where, it's often now posited not as like this weird religious thing or anything else, but it's like, it's an infection, it's superpowered rabies or something like that. And I think even when that stuff came out, there was probably playing off of fears, obviously not as big as COVID, but, about say mad cow disease or Ebola outbreaks or anything like that. And so what I've been doing, which maybe makes me a freak, is I've read 2 zombie books that I felt was weirdly cathartic, even though they were way too close to home. World War Z, Max Brooks wrote that book basically looking at how countries responded to pandemics and then like modeling them how they would respond to a zombie outbreak. And so like China tries to keep it a secret, and you know, like Israel makes like a basically fortress and keeps like everyone out, and America does this, and there's people who want to get bitten by the zombies because they want to be their friends or something like that. And in some ways, reading it now, it was really like it was written obviously way before this, but you're like, fuck, that's too real. And another one is, I cannot recommend this book enough, and I think I've mentioned it before, Severance by Ling Ma. This is a weird description. It's almost like if Fight Club were a zombie book. It's like a sort of satire of office corporate culture through the lens of a zombie outbreak. But she talks about people wearing branded masks and, you know, people not taking it seriously and all that stuff. And so through that light fictionalization, like I found it cathartic, but maybe I'm a psychopath. And I think similarly for TV, like I don't want to see, you know, Chernobyl, but about COVID, because I get it. But I would see like a TV version of any of these books, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you bring up Severance. That's one of the first books I started to read when the pandemic started, and I had to stop at first because I got too anxious because it was too real right off the bat. But yeah, and I think a lot of the examples you bring up, Alec, are important because they're either, you know, they're analogous to or exploring themes of something like that, but without literalizing. So the thing that I find to be a bummer about all the TV shows I just listed is they're not doing anything creative or interesting playing off the themes or the emotions we experience. They're just like, let's do COVID episodes.
Yeah, which is
yeah, and I think that's why whether it's films that explore fears about like the Cold War or nuclear fallout or, you know, the fear of the other or immigration or all these things, we have films that explore those in creative and interesting ways. But when it's literalized, it kind of sucks. And I thought about this when we were just talking, like, you know, I think one of the best things that happened after 9/11 is that we only did a few things about it and then moved on. I think there was like the two main movies that came out about 9/11, United 93 and the other one. And the reason I can't think of the name.
Nick Cage, I think.
Yeah. And neither of them were that good. And I don't think they were that culturally important. And I think that we've looked at in the years since. I know that I've read a few novels that all of a sudden have like, now 9/11's happening out of nowhere. And I find it so corny and cheesy and it doesn't really do anything. So I think of it like that. Like that was a traumatic thing that happened, you know, primarily in America, but affected people around the world that we didn't need to see art about to process it. And we didn't need to like deal with. Now, of course, there was a wave of post 9/11 media that dealt with global political fears and dealt with like, you know, terrorism and the war on terror in interesting ways. But yeah, so I just can't see a reason why we need to see literalized accounts and depictions of the COVID-19 pandemic in our media.
Dialectica, which is a cool username in the chat.
Very cool name.
I read the graphic novel Why the Last Man, and it's very much about 9/11, which I did not know, but I know.
Oh, cool.
It's Brian K. Vaughan who also did Saga, which is a great graphic novel series. So thanks for that.
Awesome. Tip. Yeah. Now, I mean, one question then, if does anyone else have any other deep thoughts on this?
I just find it very stressful. Like rather than, I also feel like it's very lazy storytelling. It's not even storytelling. It's just like, it's just lazy. Like look on Twitter, you'll be able to find some plot lines, call it a day.
Well,
They're
of
just,
course.
like, phoning it in.
Especially for like the medical shows. I don't know, just kind of, it's easy. You're just literally, it's sort of like how, and like, I like Law and Order, so I don't mean this in a mean way, but it's like how Law and Order just does an episode on any like, not popular, but like crime that's big in the media, and they change like 3 details, and they're just like, great episode, done. And I get it, Dick Wolf, you're producing 900 TV shows at a fast clip, and you need storylines, but it's like lazy and not interesting. And I think, but with all the medical shows, though, I think the thing I am least excited to see is a Judd Apatow Netflix movie. And here's why Judd Apatow Netflix is horrifying. The guy makes everything too long, and now he doesn't have like the limit of a movie theater experience. So maybe a 5-hour movie about, and I guess it's about like comedians quarantined in a hotel as they wait to shoot something dealing with COVID. And I'm like, I just don't care about you people and how it's affecting you. This sounds terrible. Maybe it'll be great, but I think it's going to be bad.
You know what movie is going to be terrible that I cannot wait to watch? Isn't Michael Bay making a COVID movie where it's like, it's
my God.
It's like mutated, and so now we all live in like a police state because it's way more deadly, and it just seems like the worst movie you could make right now. But also like there's like a smart way to make that movie, and I know he's not going to make it smart.
The only COVID type of film or like movie or like a TV show that I would watch is like a cartoon version told from the perspective of COVID. Like COVID, like the little like thing is like talking about humans and like how stupid they are. Like that's what I would be interested in watching. I think that shit would be
Life
funny.
is sweet. These dumbasses refuse to wear a mask. I can go wherever I want.
Yeah. And
Okay,
then, like,
so
COVID
someone
just,
get on
like,
that.
Teabagging everybody.
Okay, there's nothing more we can say beyond that. We're going to end on Survey's note of the idea of a cartoon where COVID teabags everyone. For any reason you don't know what teabagging is, look it up.
Don't.
Okay, so that's we'll end that topic on that. But of course, as always, let us know what you think about that. Now we'll end on a just totally comforting, not at all terrifying note. Alec, I guess there's some new research or some new findings on how the U.S. military is using our app data. But it's fine because it's not like we're on apps any of our days anyways. But what'd you find for us? Please tell us comforting things that aren't scary.
Yeah, this is not scary at all. So this is from a Vice article called How the U.S. Military Buys Location Data from Ordinary Apps. So basically what's happening is there are these data brokerage companies that they'll do things like put a snippet of code in your leveling app that you use on your phone to level the shelf, or like a storm chasing app, or in those are real examples, or like a Muslim dating app or something like that. And a lot of that location data is used by advertising firms to, geo-target you ads, like you drove by a Wawa, we're going to try to sell you a sandwich. But it also apparently ends up the military is buying it, and specifically large amounts of American citizens and people abroad are being tracked, and their data is being given to the U.S. military. So here's the lead from that article. The U.S. military is buying the granular movement data of people around the world, harvested from innocuous seeming apps. Motherboard has learned the most popular app among a group Motherboard analyzed connected this sort of data sale is a Muslim prayer and Quran app that has more than 98 million downloads worldwide. Others include Muslim dating app and a popular Craigslist app, an app for following storms, and a level app that can be used for help, for example, to install shelves in a bedroom. This is not an entirely new process. Border Control, the U.S. Border Control has bought, they've been under scrutiny because they will buy location data to find out where people are. And the whole question is, normally you would need a warrant for that, but they're doing that without warrant. The IRS also uses a different service to buy location data from people. One of these services called Locate X, where they basically have an employee describe how you can sort of like draw an area around a map and see all the devices in there and see where they're going, and then single out a specific device. And, it's all like anonymized. I can't say that word. But it becomes very easy to it becomes very easy to pin someone's identity to it, because it's like, oh, this person, we know this amount of data, they live here, they go to work there, this is basically them, we can see how many times they're going to Del Taco, that sort of stuff. And a lot of times it's just like weaseling its way into other apps. For instance, Xmode, a company, incentivizes regular apps to put their little snippet of code in. And an example is if you have 50,000 daily users, you can get about $1,500 a month in them. And so if I'm developing, Farmville 2.0, I can throw that in there. And basically the point is, I think it's very shitty. I think, I'm a person who cares about privacy, but also feels very nihilistic about it sometimes, because it feels like an uphill struggle that will never go away. Basically, my only option is to entirely disconnect from things. And, like as a country, even I will call it politically agnostic. We were built on, say, like not trusting the government to know where we are, what we're doing. And the government can just completely circumvent all that stuff by buying your data from one of these brokerage firms.
Yeah. I mean, you used this phrase before, but yeah, I'm pretty nihilist about all this and have kind of given up, because I can't see how we ever can have real privacy again. Like, hearing this stuff just makes me feel even more like that the only way you could truly avoid this is if you throw away your TV and move to the country, as John Prine would say, and just like completely go off the grid. I just can't see. And like, as we become increasingly dependent on apps, not just for, social media and entertainment, but like our eating and our health and learning about our weather and all these sorts of things, like it's just so terrifying. And then you mix that with the fact that now so many people are willfully giving up their biometric data with all of the, the watches and phone apps that track all these things about our health. Like, yeah, just hearing you talk about this, like, it sounds, I agree with you, Alex, so shitty, but at the same way, it's like, I just feel like, why fight it? I'd rather just lay back and take it because I can't see a way out of it.
Oh, I will also say the military has apparently used this data overseas to do drone strikes.
Oh boy, that's even better.
Serbi, I want to hear what you say, but it also just, the U.S. military is like, we're not using this on American civilians, even though they're buying the data. And obviously, in general, except for a few notable exceptions, they're not drone striking American citizens. But just think about, like, if you live in another country, I know we have a lot of international listeners, or I'll just use it, like, imagine Americans are always freaking out about the Chinese government knowing where they are and what they're doing. And yeah, I think that's like a thing to be freaked out about. But just to like be living your life in another country and knowing that a foreign government just knows what you're up to, it seems horrifying. Go ahead, Sophie.
Makes me want to live in Europe where they have like stronger privacy laws and like data collection laws, because things like this, like, it really freaks me out, and it makes me like, I already don't like using apps and stuff, but there are times where you can't get away from it. Like, in order to set up like your TV or your internet, you have to download their stupid app
Your Juicero.
in order to like authorize it.
Yeah.
So there's no way around it. And as somebody who's like really like almost paranoid and panicked about privacy, it feels like the end of the world to me. And I have nothing to hide, but I just don't like people knowing me.
Well, it's funny that you bring up Europe, Serbi, because I was just thinking about, in my head, I was thinking that Europe was better, but then I was also thinking about how common CCTV is in Europe and especially the UK, and how they have a more monitored culture in that more literal sense of where it's pretty easy to track people. Like, if you commit a crime and jump on the train and take this bus, they'll just like follow you all the way home and know what you did. And I was thinking, like, which one is worse? Would I rather be tracked like that or my apps and maybe CCTV? But yeah, and I think that anxiety you're describing, Serbi, it's not like any of us, as far as I know of, are involved in like underground digital crime syndicates or anything, or are like selling body parts on the dark web.
Not
Yet
anymore.
I still, you got to get out of the game sometimes. You go out when your hands hot. But I don't even really have anything to hide, and yet I get terrified about this sort of stuff. And then I guess in this, go ahead, Alec.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, a good example is the NYPD recently used facial recognition technology to find a protester and go arrest them. So like the NYPD is, they don't have a great relationship with peaceful protesters. I don't know if anyone knew that. And so that, whether the protester could have, assaulted a cop, but they could have just like said, hey, I don't like you. And they're like, well, I'm going to fucking come after you. And like, they're not above that kind of shit. And I think, the one thing I'll defend about, the Constitution, the Constitution is like don't trust the police, basically is, I think, what America was founded on. But go ahead.
And I could just see this like downward spiral too, where, okay, so now people are worried that if I go to a protest and someone takes a picture, they'll track me and arrest me, maybe for something I didn't do. So then it's like, okay, now people should start wearing like all black and masks to protest. Well, then the police react to that by being like, oh, we have these like anonymous mobs, so we need to take them out because they're dangerous. So it only feeds into the need for more surveillance and higher levels of security as we try to get off it. The same way where like someone starts a secure messaging app or a secure version of this, but soon the narrative is, ooh, well, this is only used for selling drugs or weapons, so we got to take that down.
Yeah. And to your point about CCTV, maybe this is just the new bad thing making the old bad thing look better. But at least as I like, when I see like old school security cameras in bodegas, and I don't know if this is true of CCTV in like Britain, but when it's like decentralized and someone has to like go and like look at the tapes, and the tapes like may or may not like erase every 48 hours or 72 hours or something like that, there's still some concerns there, but at least like it goes away and is not easily, where with like Ring cameras, that Amazon has, that they own Ring, and then they sell the data to, law enforcement and lots of other people. It's like someone can go in an algorithm at any point in the future, tomorrow, a year from now, 10 years from now, and collect all this data, know exactly what I look like, have a profile on all my habits. And I think that's a lot different than like, we're going to have a human sit down at a like grainy monitor and see who robbed this store,
And then you think about all that compounded with, algorithmic computation that will eventually be able to say like, well, we can predict who is going to be a criminal based on where they live, what they're like, what apps they go on, what things they look at on social media. And that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be really horrible for me because the shit that I look up is so disturbing at times. And sometimes I
let's maybe focus on this.
I forget to log out of my work browser. And so I'll look up things and I'm always wondering, like, is somebody from IT going to ask me why I'm looking up how to dissolve a body or just weird things.
Good question. Have you really, is that a real example? Have you looked up how to dissolve a body?
Haven't we all?
Yeah.
What else? Serby, give us your internet history.
Yeah.
How to tie a noose, just things that I'm curious about. Not that I'm looking to tie a noose for myself, but just very curious about things. Or if I read an article and somebody's oh, he was stabbed 25 times and survived. I might look up how many times you need to stab somebody in order for them to die, because 25 times seems like a lot. So,
that's a good question. Yeah.
Not that I'm looking to kill or murder or kill myself. It's just out of curiosity.
Serby, you completely changed my mind. Now I'm yes, let's monitor people. And if they search for stuff like this, preemptively put them in jail. So Serby, you're done.
I would be done. I would be I would rather have somebody track me when I'm out on the street, in England, than to have somebody look at my browsing history.
No, but I don't blame you, and I get it. I got really obsessed with CSI in college, and once our RA walked in as we were discussing how we would commit the perfect crime and dispose of the body, and he was pretty upset when he walked in mid-conversation to me talking about how I chop it up into pieces, go out in deep waters, and try to feed it to a school of sharks.
Listen, yeah that's totally normal. I think there's obviously these examples, but I feel like it's worth noting that at least to my knowledge, the actual thing that would probably happen is you read politically oriented websites or hang out with certain organizations, and then you become a target for surveillance. And so I'll just use historical examples. During World War I, activists would hand out anti-war materials protesting the war. They were affiliated with different organizations, but a lot of them that made it to the Supreme Court were anarchist. And so it's great, we're gonna surveil, not with this fancy technology, the people you hang out with, the people who are reading the books that you read, and then basically using that to create pressure on a political, and that sort of stuff happens today. Lots of activists get interviewed about the people that they know and the books they read and shit like that.
Yeah.
And it's just a nightmare regardless of what you're reading.
So everything's good and okay, and we're safe and private, and nothing bad will ever happen to any of us. Okay, any final thoughts on this one before we move on?
Terrifying.
That's pretty good. Terrifying is a good description of this, and also of Serby's search history. So, and before we move on, I just want to give a quick shout out to some people that have recently reviewed the podcast. It means a lot to us. The Cluck Clown, who gave us 5 stars, said, blew me away. I'm either having a mental breakdown or a religious experience. Guess time will tell. I swear to God, Cluck Clown, when we have meetings about this and we say, let's have a hybrid of a mental breakdown and a religious experience twice a month. Someone whose username is a bunch of letters and numbers said, this show is amazing. Thank you so much. And they say, I've been here since the beginning. I've loved every minute. Miss you, Jared. We also love every minute, and we also miss Jared. So we're with you. And then Helen Ting Ting says, keeping me sane. Thank you. Truly. Happy we can do it.
The letters and numbers, dude, is leet speak for cognito ergo sum.
God.
Not
sorry.
cogito,
that took me a second.
Cogito. I don't know how to say that word, but cognito.
Oh my God, you're right. I'm sorry. I pulled it up on my phone real small so I'm sorry for that. But we really appreciate that. Please review us. I know a while ago I asked people to review us and say who would play us in a film. Maybe if you want to review us and you could associate each of us with a food item, a dish, so to speak. or even a cocktail or a beverage? What do you think of when you think of us if we were a cocktail menu or a restaurant? That was a weird one. Maybe just review it and tell us why you love us. Now, speaking of other ways besides reviewing us that you could get involved, tell us what you think, and potentially make us uncomfortable, you can email us or call us. So you know this, we tell you every week. You can email us at culturebinge@wisecrack.co. No M, never an M. culturebinge@wisecrack.co. And call us at 213-534-8807. That is 213-534-8807. And I think we have some voicemails and maybe an email or two this time around, Alec. Am I wrong?
Yeah, we've got one from, I believe, Alex about some college questions, some PhD questions.
Oh,
and we've got
we love
someone
college.
very qualified to give that answer.
Hello, my name is Alex, and I live in the Midwest, and I just listened to your podcast on my walk this morning about COVID, which I was really thankful for. I kind of had a question that has to do with my personal life, and then at the end of this, I also mention about my plans for Thanksgiving, since I feel pretty safe in how I done them. So my main question is because I heard, I think it was Mike has a PhD, and I'm assuming a lot of you are basically what you call podcasters, media content creators, geniuses, have PhDs as well. And I am planning to actually apply to the University of Toronto's Organizational Behavior and Human Resource Management PhD program. And I have been out of school for pretty much like 5 years now. And I majored in business, but have a strong interest in philosophy and specifically like sociology or even more specific, culture and understanding culture, because I got into consulting at a university and I help all types of businesses in consulting, and now I'm sick and tired of seeing all my students do all the research and doing it wrong, and I kind of want to do it myself and I want to learn how to do that. And I'm trying to get into this PhD program with not any experience in publishing and wanted some advice in, writing my letter of intent, and how I might be able to convey I have some experience in writing papers, but they're not necessarily academic papers. They're for companies and things like that. So I really appreciate that with all the big brains that you have there at Wisecrack. The last thing I'll leave you with is Thanksgiving. I got tested for COVID. I was negative. I'm quarantining with my fiance in Kansas City, and I plan to see my parents on Thanksgiving Day. Not combining the two families, like my fiance's and me, but instead like being with them separately and spending time with them. It'll be just a group of like 3 of us for each dinner. So that's how I'm doing it. Thank you very much, and be safe, everybody. And thank you for all the work you guys put into these type of content. It's greatly appreciated. Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Alex. From one Alec to an Alex. A lot of us, well, there are many people with PhDs, but I think, Burns has a PhD. He's a doctor of nihilism. And Serby, you have some sort of, you're more educated than I am. She has an MBA. I have nothing.
She plays basketball.
I have a bachelor's degree because I am lesser than these people. But I do want it in the chat. Zach says, from one PhD student to a future one, good luck, comrade. So there's that. But let's get the real answers from the real qualified people who are not me.
Well, I would just quickly say, as someone, I've applied for a lot of stuff, and then I've been on some committees, like looking at applications before. I think something that people should remember is the value of non-academic stuff. Because at a certain point, once you've been in academia for a while, you know that people that have never been outside of academia are often very incompetent and have never lived in the real world, interacted with real people, or dealt with real things. So especially, it sounds like for the program you're discussing, Alex, I do think like having practical experience in the private sector and in the real world is a benefit and not something that's going to hurt you. And I think it's important to, in like a cover letter or an application letter, to not shy away from that, to not feel like you have to explain away those things, but to take ownership over it and show how what you've already done puts you in a good position to succeed in a program like that. And maybe that even means like you've worked with different diverse organizations while managing deadlines, writing in different styles, learning about different communities in your work. I would see all that as playing pretty well and pretty strongly. So I would just say simply, don't view that as a negative, view it as a positive and a strength, and something that you can use to your advantage, because you can always make someone read more books, but you can't give someone experience they don't have. So I would rather have a student coming in with tons of great experience who maybe hasn't read all the literature than someone who's read all the books but hasn't been off a university campus in 20 years.
That's great advice. I have a background in writing and editing, and I've written a ton of essays and have helped other people write theirs. So once you write yours, if you want to email it to culturebinge@wisecrack.co, I will edit it for you and give you feedback.
Hell yeah, that's sick. Take advantage of that, seriously, because some people will charge you a bunch of money for that, and Serbi's just trying to give you help. So that's awesome. Any thoughts from you, Alex?
No, and I just feel unqualified because I did apply to one graduate program and I was rejected after one of my professors forgot to hand in their letter of recommendation.
Oh, classic.
And he's like a very good and smart professor that I really admire and respect, but also it's like, like basically just like this old crusty, is that the right word? Like lefty academic who's like, whatever, I'm not good at deadlines and structure, and so I'm going to forget your thinking and ruin your future. But now I work at Wisecrack, so everything worked out.
Yeah. No, I think the worst things I've ever done in my life might potentially be not getting recommendation letters in on time or forgetting them for students who I loved and believed in so much.
So you're the bad man.
I think I've been the bad man before, and that's why I've done it.
Can you apologize to them now?
I forget names, but yeah, last year I wrote a recommendation letter for a former student for law school, and I think I just told him, like, dude, like, just email me incessantly. Don't feel bad. 3 days before, if you have not heard from me, you can email me and be like, what the fuck? And he did. And I wrote the letter and he got into his top choice school. And once COVID's over, we're going to have a beer to celebrate.
That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah. So what else do we got?
We've got another voicemail. Is it Adrian?
I think it was Adrian, right?
Hi, this is Adrian from Phoenix, Arizona. My question is, what do you think the future is for new viruses and new diseases? It seems like COVID is like basically the flavor of the month. And we kind of forgot about other stuff too, like the super disease, like the flu, and also the bubonic plague, cholera, typhus, all that stuff. So I just want to know, what do you guys think? Do you think this will be the flavor of the month or continue to spread for the next couple of years or decades? Thank you. I
get really excited when I can answer things. I don't answer things that I don't know how to do. But
take it away.
So I'm most probably just going to recommend some books, but there's a lot of great stuff that I've read in the last year about this topic. There is a book by David Quammen. It gets a little boring at times, but it's got good info, called Spillover. Spillover by David Quammen. And it doesn't talk about the future necessarily, but basically we're just, a lot of our new diseases, including, COVID-19, SARS, et cetera, are new diseases that have newly adapted to spreading from human to human. And so it's not necessarily the old stuff like cholera, like tuberculosis, et cetera, that it's going to lead to like sort of the big horrific pandemic. It's going to be, a new strain of flu, a coronavirus. There's other kinds of viruses I'm also forgetting. A lot of the older diseases have also just basically been taken care of by like cholera, at least in the developed world. Like plumbing, it does a really good job of keeping that in check. There's another really good book that's much more interesting, I think, David Quammen book called Pandemic by Sonia Shah that talks about some of this stuff. And then there's a book that I started to read. God, I have to Google it. It's called The Coming Plague. Yeah,
I think that's definitely a book. Yeah.
The Coming Plague, Newly Emerging Diseases. I started reading it and got a little bored, but that was written in 1995, so it's a little bit old. But yeah, it's like a really interesting topic, and we're always on the lookout for like a new strain of flu that has mutated, in birds or pigs or anything like that. But then there's just the shit we don't know about. There's a great Radiolab episode about how fungus might kill us all soon because mammals specifically evolved with our body temperature to be too hot for most fungi to thrive in. And now with global warming, they are getting they're getting used to hot weather and therefore more capable of surviving in our bodies. And so fungal infections that we've never really heard of are starting to pop up. So yeah, it's the stuff you don't know about. It's going to kill you, not to freak everyone out.
Wow. Yeah, Alec knows all the science here and has read way too much on this stuff. I will just simply say, Alec and every other smart person who I've read or talked to on this seems to think that this is not a one-off that we are going through and that we will be entering an age of things like this. So things are good. Hug those that you love and get a doomsday bunker.
Yeah.
And a lot of Clorox wipes for the doomsday bunker.
And toilet paper.
Anything that...
Yes.
Stock up on toilet paper for the next 50 years.
Yeah, be that guy that takes all the toilet paper from your
Get a
local
Costco
store.
membership. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything to add, Serby?
No, I think it's just very depressing. I kind of tuned out a little bit. It was like making me anxious. So I was like, good. I can't listen to this.
That's fine.
That sounds very fair. Anything else?
We've got, I might have time for one or two emails. If anyone wants to email us, again, it's culturebinge@wisecrack.co. We got a lot of emails telling me I wasn't trash for hiking, so thank you for the self-affirmation. I really needed it. Here's an email from FJ about the exam proctoring apps. Last week we talked about the weird, creepy surveillance shit schools are doing. We've got a few perspectives on it. This one is from an actual person teaching. So I'm ready to chime in on your recent discussion about exam proctoring apps. I've had the opportunity to teach a few times in my PhD, my most recent time being this fall during the pandemic. I'll start by saying that I agree with a lot of what you said about the cons to exam proctoring apps, and I myself have noticed the stubborn fixation universities have on preventing cheating, even if it comes to the detriment of the students' learning experiences. However, I will tell you how I use the exam proctoring app for my course in the hopes it will present an example of how this technology can be used fairly. The app we use is called HonorLock, and it works pretty much how Respondus was described. That's the other app. Picture of your face, 360 room scan, etc. Regarding accessibility, I, as the instructor, am able to customize what each student needs to do to use the app. So if I'm made aware of any student with special needs, I can eliminate a lot of the barriers. Additionally, it provides 24/7 student support. I know several of my students have had issues with face scans or accessing the exams, and were able to resolve them by chatting with an actual human. Finally, I want to talk about the magic AI that flags exam sessions as instances of cheating. I don't know how other teachers use this info, but here's how I do it. Wherever the system flags is for me to decide if I want to investigate further or not. It isn't an automatic fail for the student. For example, I'll go in, see that system flagged Michael Burns, and then review the recording to see he was just running a few laps to get his brain going. So I'll ignore the flag and move on. Takeaway here is that the app gives me all this information, but I get to decide what is fair to all my students. Thanks for that email. Great. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah.
I think we're all very skeptical, but yeah, what do you think?
It's nice to hear professors taking it seriously and not just like doing the one size fits all sort of thing, which I think a lot of, from my research, it seems like a lot of professors are doing.
Yeah, I think you can take like fascist technology, but mix it with a thoughtful professor and find something that's kind of human in the middle. So it's good to know that the people that are using this technology aren't as like Orwellian as the technology itself.
And I think my only like slight maybe pushback is that it's great that, you know, they can make these exceptions and stuff like that, but I think even making people jump through extra hoops just to do the basic thing. Now I know like that's always a balance, like even in regular test taking, people get exceptions for accessibility reasons, whether it's they need more time or whatever. But I think like, oh, now it's my burden as a student to like call the customer support line and deal with this shit. Or it's like, you know, now I'm under increased scrutiny because I'm doing laps and like, yes, like I hopefully have a great professor like FJ, but FJ, but maybe I don't. And then I'm going to stress about that. I don't know. I am slightly relieved, but also still terrified, which gets us to our next email from the other side. James is a student, same topic. I'm a sophomore student at a private research university in the US that unfortunately embraced Orwellian exam proctoring solutions. And as you'd expect, it's a special kind of hell.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah, Respondus's lockdown browser known colloquially as malware browser, is the main offender. As y'all mentioned in the latest episode, it closes all applications on your computer, even background ones, turns on your camera and microphone, and records and monitors your screen. And if that's not bad enough, as basically non-existent user interface that is about as stylish and responsive as what I'd imagine Internet Explorer was like in 2004. Man, he doesn't know.
As you'd imagine, let me tell you, son.
Oh, I feel old. And it doesn't even work. Even with 360-degree area scan, it's very easy to cheat. Sticky notes on the edges of the screen is a very simple idea, or with a bit of planning, having a table, papers just out of sight during the scan, and then pulling them out for the test. Also easy to pull off. Love these cheating tips. However, these methods only work when the professor has disabled the eye tracking feature, which most do because it's overly sensitive. For instance, the first time I had to use the malware browser, I did the typical look up and to the left to remember something. When I looked back at the quiz, there was a pop-up that said I looked away for too long. Again, my quiz would, if I did that again, the quiz would automatically close and a notice with a video snippet would be sent to my professor. Michael was right in that only business professors ever used it. My engineering and humanities professors just give us time-sensitive take-home quizzes. Yeah. Plus, congrats on being right. Plus, after the first few assignments with malware browser, enough students complained about the heightened anxiety about the browser's general lack of usability that my business professors have also stopped using it. After a lockdown browser flopped, one of my business professors moved on to a different idea. For our midterm, they split us into groups of 5 at a specific time. The 5 of us had to log into Zoom to take the exam with a TA monitoring us from our webcams. Also, we were required to join Zoom from our phones and place them a few feet behind or beside us.
What?
This was so that the TA could monitor our screens in the work area from our phone's cameras. The solution felt even more like Big Brother. It's not like an in-person exam. Everyone has a personal proctor watching everything from a foot away. I know this was a long email, but I actually had a lot of insight to share for once. You did. Thank you so much. I'm a big fan.
Thank you.
Wisecrack was actually one of the main contributors to my pursuing a philosophy minor. That's rad.
That's killer. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Maybe I'll keep some ethics in my mind while I'm slutting myself over to big tech. Let's not slut shame, but yeah. So thank you, James.
I hate these TAs. These TAs are snitches, and they're not on the side. As a TA, you should not identify with the professorial class. You should be on the side of the students. And the fact that you're just going to snitch on Zoom, be a cool TA. Log on to Zoom and be like, hey, guys, I trust that you're not idiots. Do what you need to do. I'm not going to make you do the phone Zoom thing. I'm going to tell Professor Wilson that you all did it right. Just have fun, you know?
Yeah. Was it a different email or this email? Somebody mentioned for math exams, people will put the answers on their, they're allowed to use the smart, they're not smart calculators. I forget what the fuck.
Graphic
calculators. Thank you. They're allowed to use those. And I specifically remember in my computer science class, one of my fellow high school fledgling computer scientists created a thing on the calculator to do the quadratic formula and show all the steps, which made it so, and installed them on every calculator in the school. So everyone was just cheating on those, and it was amazing. Also, a hot tip, record yourself, like reading information, run it through your sleeve or long sleeves, and just get that on the camera. Just put your hand on your ear. It just looks like you're sort of like, resting to the side. I did it on a history exam. It worked great. Anyway.
Listen, I have some great cheating tips, but we don't have time. Serby, sorry, you can go.
Oh, it was going to be a cheating tip, but that's...
Yeah, Serby, you give a last cheating tip, and then I'll wrap things up.
Could you write stuff on the back of your hand? Because, I mean, do they make you put up your hands to, like, see in the camera? Otherwise, you could, like, write formulas and stuff.
I think it's like the eye tracking, though, is the problem.
Get all your things tattooed. You can't get a tattoo removed, baby. So get everything tattooed onto your arms. Horrible advice. Okay, so we'll be back later. We'll give you some cheating advice because we are, in some circumstances, I think, a pro-cheating podcast. But thank you so much for your emails and calls. Once again, culturebinge@wisecrack.co, 213-534-8807. And once again, if you maybe don't have something you feel like is worthy of an email or phone call, subscribe and review the podcast. I'll give you 3 categories. You can still do cast us in a movie, who plays us. 2, what dish would be on a restaurant menu. 3, what artist or band would we be? Who do you associate with each of us? Okay, so you can go film, food, tunes. Do one of those. We'll read it on air. I promise. Unless it's really offensive, we will not read it.
We won't read if you say either any of us are Nickelback. That is not allowed.
Now they're all going to say we're Nickelback. You put the idea in their head. Okay, so we will be back, as we said before, in 2 weeks. We hope everyone has a safe Thanksgiving. Please keep yourself and others safe. And in the meantime, if you want to catch up with us, Alec, where can they find you on the internet?
I'm on Twitter at WisecrackAlec. It's right there in the thing.
Serby, where are you at?
Suri Patel 22 on Twitter.
Awesome. And I'm Michael O'Burns on various social media platforms. So check in with us in the meantime. If not, we will see you in 2 weeks. This has been Culture Binge. Bye.
Bye.